Get into the content of community-based care, which is the first thing on our agenda. I want to do just a quick popcorn around the room for everyone to just say your first name and what your role here as is at CASA. So advocate, companion, staff. If you're something else, throw that in there. I'm going to start up here, if that's okay, and then we'll just think back and forth just so that we all have an idea of who is in the room with us today.
I'm Samuel. This is my mom. I'm her companion. Yeah, that's about it. I go to San Houston.
My name is Stephanie. I go by Stephanie. I'm an advocate.
And I'm Sue Pam, and I'm an advocate.
Christy Pan, board member, advocate, grunt to the staff.
He's the best one.
Landscape.
I'm Vince and I'm a companion.
Oh, sorry. Pam, advocate.
Stephen, advocate.
Laura, new advocate.
Hey, I'm an advocate.
Tony, advocate. Margaret, companion.
Joanne, advocate.
Debbie, advocate. Penny, companion.
Tom advocate.
Jennifer, companion.
Laura, advocate. I'm Laura, I'm the new development director at CASA as of yesterday.
Lynn Conant, advocate. Is it my turn? Yes. I'm Martha Carroll, I'm an advocate.
Just in time.
Yeah.
Jerry Davidson, companion.
Brenda Burns, advocate.
Bernita Henley, advocate.
Lois, advocate. Bridget, advocate.
Mike, companion.
Perfect. And just in case anyone doesn't know, I'm Kim, and I'm on the staff.
Catherine, and I'm on staff.
Rachel, I'm on staff.
Janet, I'm on staff.
Everybody needs to know Janet.
We don't know, Janet, you missed a step.
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing that we are going to talk about today, and what is maybe one of our biggest topics, is community-based care. So raise your hand if, when you hear community-based care, you have a sense of what I'm talking about, what that means for CASA, what it means, okay? Okay, we have a few hands. So we're relatively familiar. So the reason we're talking about this today is because community-based care is on our doorstep for the CASA program, for our CASA program. And so I want to talk to us a little bit about what exactly community-based care is and where it came from and what our steps forward are as a program. And then we also have a little bit of time built in for y'all to be able to ask questions and just get clarification on what this is going to look like for us. So, first, this is the handout that I'm working from, so you'll have this in your staff if you want to follow along. The first thing, community-based care is a model of child welfare that's focusing on a comprehensive network of services to meet the needs of children and families. Under community-based care, a single entity, which will be referred to as an SSCC, which we'll talk about what that means. An SSCC is responsible for coordinating and delivering all child welfare services in a specific geographic area. So that entity, your SSCC, will work with all of your providers in your area to set up and maintain all of those services. So the really short version of what I just said is that community-based care is privatized foster care into a geographic region. So an SSCC, which stands for, this is on your next slide, you don't have to write it down, a single source continuum contractor. An SSCC will come in, they will get hired as a contractor with the state of Texas, and they will manage foster care for their region. Okay? Stay with me. So, on the next slide, you guys have, to back up, about more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a a lawsuit against Texas and the foster care system. And in 2010, the state of Texas was put on a mission to redesign foster care. That they said, what is happening in the state for the children that we're working with is not working. We have to make big picture changes, not change a caseworker, change a supervisor. Big picture, how are we going to change the system to work better for our children and families? So they were told that by 2029, under this foster care redesign, that they needed to have foster care entirely privatized for the state of Texas. So we, Texas, have been on this track toward privatizing care for quite some time now. In 2017, they established the model for community-based care, for what we're working in, and there are currently 7 operational SSCCs in Texas. So I think the very first one was what I call the Bear Donut, so the circle that surrounds Bear County, that isn't Bear County itself. I think it was one of the very first ones that contracted with an SSCC and privatized their area for foster care. Fort Worth area has gone ahead of us. They were also one of the very first ones that had a contractor come in. DFPS stepped out, and that contractor became responsible for all of the kids within their foster care. The Abilene region, the Piney Woods region, sort of east, northeast Texas, Dallas, Beaumont, and then the Bear County Donut. All of those people have already transitioned in to SSCC, and we, beautiful friends, are next on the list. So, you probably have noticed that on your Optima contact logs, maybe you didn't ask a question. If you're doing your Optima contact logs, whenever you enter your contact with DFPS, it says contact with DFPS/SSCC. Those two things are going to become sort of interchangeable in this transition. The SSCC will be our new provider for foster care in the region. I'm going to pause there. Does anyone have questions theoretically about what that means?
Does that mean that we'll have a new whole base of workers?
Potentially. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the workers will look like, but right now we have this pool of workers over here that work for the state of Texas DFPS. They're caseworkers and they're supervisors. In a time, an SSCC becomes the contractor and they have to hire a full staff. So the expectation is that all of these workers are given priority in hiring by this contractor. However, these workers can say, I don't want to work for them, I'm going to go find a new job. Or I don't want to work for them, I'm going to stay here and work somewhere else in the state of Texas and find a different job there. And some of them may say, yep, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, keep serving the same kids that I'm doing, and they'll get hired on by the SSCC. So yes and no, we will see some transition in workers, but we may also see some hang with us.
So my child is in that Abilene area, that Wilkes and Amarillo, and his courtesy worker does work with privatized. So kind of
Is it, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Pam.
Oh, I was going to say, so base of operations, if we're going over to the office in Huntsville or the office in Trinity or the office, are all of those still operational, or is that also?
Those will all change.
It'll all change.
And it will be completely up to the SSCC. So right now, DFPS has the legal responsibility to have a location in each of their counties that they are providing services from. The SSCCs will not have that. And so they will put offices where they feel the offices are most needed, will be most utilized. And where they don't want an office, they'll be partnering with the community to meet physical location needs in other ways. Chris?
Is it guaranteed that if a existing DFPS staff or supervisor wants to move over, is it guaranteed they'll be hired?
I don't think it's guaranteed. But if they meet the hiring requirements, I think that the SSCC is required to hire them.
From my understanding with talking to the adoption coordinator, for the FPS, at court last month, I think it was, she said that, the, like, CPS, or what we know as CPS now, will still be in charge of determining whether the kids are taken away. Like, that part of CPS will still be CPS, but it's just after that initial, determination, that then the other SCCC will take over. Is that?
Yes, so the state of Texas CPS will still be responsible for investigations and screening. But yes, immediately, once that child has been put into legal custody of the state, then they will become the responsibility of the SSCC, who will take on all case management from there forward when they're fully transitioned.
So the cases that are already in process, will they stay the same and they'll just pick up new cases, or will they pick up these old cases, and these kids will be, these children will have new faces in front of them?
A little bit of both. To answer that question, let me have you guys, we're gonna skip
Okay.
one thing and jump over to the timeline. So just to give a sense of where we are in the timeline, so like I said, the other 7 catchment areas, as they're called, have already fully transitioned. And so we as a program are actually in 2 different stages of transition. So if you are serving right now a case from Trinity or San Jacinto County, then you are part of Region 5 from DFPS, and you are ahead of the race right now. If you're from Region 6, which is everyone that has a case from Walker County, then you're gonna be about a year behind in the transition process from what our Region 5 people are experiencing. So if you look at the timeline down here, this timeline starts with where we are right now. So, well, it starts with November, so where we are in 2 weeks from now. So in 2 weeks, on November 1st, Region 5 will be transitioning, that did not copy very well. Region 5 will be transitioning to Stage 1. So Region 5, Trinity and San Jacinto counties right now are in Stage 1 readiness, which includes data evaluation, planning, getting ready to bring on services into their program. They're not doing anything at all with the kids, but as of November 1st, Region 5 transitions into Stage 1. And so on November 1st, Region 5 will take on placements of children in foster care. So Tony, to go back to your question, on November 1st, San Jacinto and Trinity counties, they're not taking all the kids that are already in care. All the kids that are already in foster care, and they're in, especially those that are in relative placements, they're not in a paid placement, the SSCC still has nothing really to do with those kids. November 1st, again, just for San Jacinto and Trinity counties, they will take on placements of new children coming into care. So if we have a new removal of a child on November 2nd, and this child needs to go to a foster home, a shelter, a residential treatment center, we don't have a relative immediately available, that child immediately transitions to the SSCC, and they have to find the placement for that child. Now, they're not responsible for the ongoing case management of that child. And so while we're in Stage 1, there is this shared responsibility between the SSCC and DFPS. The SSCC has this set of responsibilities, DFPS has this other set of responsibilities, and they have to communicate and to coordinate those services together. Go ahead, Lois.
So, maybe it's just being unclear, as far as the students, I was saying, the complainants currently have, what is our role as CASA if we're in Trinity, Region 5?
Okay, so Lois asked, essentially, what does this mean for our role as a CASA, which is obviously what we're here to talk about. theoretically, our role as a CASA should not change in this transition. We will be responsible, contact all people, visit the child, monitor educational advocacy, medical advocacy, safety of the child. Our list of responsibilities doesn't change. The only thing that's different is that when we are needing to contact DFPS, we will start now contacting the SSCC. And so for the kids that y'all are serving right now, that are not going to be new removals, more than likely, for a period of time still, you are still going to be contacting your DFPS caseworker until they get to stage 2. When they get to stage 2, all the kids move over. If they haven't already moved them over, then once they get to stage 2, which is in the spring, April-ish, then all of our Trinity and San Jacinto County kids will be fully the responsibility of the SSCC from the moment they are given legal custody to the state. So that means they're going to do PAL, they're going to do adoption services, they're going to do conservatorship services, placement services, all the things in the spring will be the responsibility of the SSCC. So for Trinity and San Jacinto County, Texas Family Care Network is the name of the SSCC that has been contracted for Region 5. So we will start in November having sit-down conversations. Rachel and I went to a meeting a month or 2 ago to meet with Texas Family Care Network leadership to start that conversation. But once November comes, we'll be talking with them pretty regularly about what their transition phase is, what's going well, what's not going well, what are our continuing questions, and that will continue probably for the next 18 months on a regular basis to make sure that we are all on the same page about how we're serving these kids.
In the other districts that have already done this in place, have you heard good things?
Yes. So she asked if in the other areas that this is already active, we're hearing good things. There, I will say, just very honestly, that there's some mixed review. The transition is challenging. This part that we're walking into right now is the hard part of community-based care. Being able to drop this and pick up this and not lose any pieces on the way is difficult. Tarrant County, the Fort Worth area, was one of the very first SSCCs, or very first to transition to an SSCC, and their program cannot speak highly enough of how much they feel that it has benefited their program. They're a little bit more urban than us, a little bit, in Fort Worth, and so the urban-rural comparison has been somewhat of a difference maker. Are the supports still available in the same ways for rural transitions as it is for urban transitions? And that'll be the big question, one of the big questions to be answered. Before I answer another question.
Janet warned me not to be disruptive in class, so I'm restrain myself, but the SCC geographic area of responsibility is based on the child's origination or where the child ends up?
Where they came from, the same way that it has always
Doesn't matter where
existed.
they end
So
up.
where the court case,
This SSC will manage them even if they're south of Houston,
correct,
even though they're in another SSCC's area?
correct.
Okay.
So that's the Trinity and San Jacinto County story. And then, like I said, Walker County is about a year behind right now. So right now, for Walker County, for Region 6, so Region 6 includes Harris County is 6A, and then 6B is the 12 counties that surround Harris County. So Washington, Waller, us, Galveston, Colorado, Fort Bend, all of those are part of 6B. So that region right now is open for contract. So if Texas Family Care Network, for example, who has been awarded our contract for Region 5, also wanted to take Region 6, then this is their time to go to the state of Texas and say, we would like to take Region 6. It is not clear and it is not defined as to what contractor will take what portions of the region. So a contractor can come in and say, I only want 6A, I only want Harris County. Or they could say, I only want 6B. I'm not touching Harris County, but I'll take all the other 12. They can say, I only want 6B north. I only want these 6 counties on the north side of the region, and it is up to DFPS to manage all of these contracts and find contractors that will fulfill the need for 6A and for all 12 counties in 6B. So we're in that limbo right now that we know it's open for Walker County, and it is our hope that by the time we get to March, there will be contractors available that will cover all of Region 6. If a portion of Region 6 has a appropriate contract, so let's say someone comes in and says, I want 6B, but not 6A, it will not delay the process for 6B. So if no one wants Harris County, which maybe no one would want Harris County, if no one wants Harris County, then the Harris County part of the process will get held back, and DFPS has the option to go ahead and award a contract to the other contractors that are looking at the other counties. So it is our hope that come spring, March, April, May, we will be getting an announcement from our Region 6 partners saying who the SSCC will be for Walker County, and then from there, they'll have that 6-month transition readiness period, get acquainted with people, get services set up, and then they'll go into their stage 1 maybe in the fall of next year. So by spring of 2025 is when we're looking at having all 3 of our counties all under privatized care in sort of successive transitions for those counties. Chris?
Does it stay the same if the case originates in Walker County, regardless of where the child is? We would be still working with our originally assigned SSCC whenever it happens.
Yes.
It wouldn't be moved over to wherever the child plays.
No. Yeah, the court case will still determine who is responsible for the child. So whatever county of court that child's case is held in will continue to be the responsibility of the SSCC. So to back up to the goals of community-based care, the goal is really to bring services closer to home for all of the kids in care. So one thing that maybe isn't super commonly known is that Harris County is like the hub of paid foster care. Like if you need a RTC or a shelter or a psych hospital, it's in Harris County. So Harris County has a ton of beds available, but those beds are being used by people from all these other regions who don't have shelters and RTCs and locations for kids to go. So the goal of community-based care is to say, hey, I'm the Region 5 SSCC contractor, and in my region, I don't have a single RTC. I need to fix that because I get penalized financially when I send kids to an RTC in someone else's region. And so I would rather just build my own right here and make it available for kids in my area so that I don't have to keep sending my kids to Harris County or to Beaumont to be placed in an RTC paid placement. So the goal is to keep kids close to home, to keep them in their schools, to keep them close with their families, to stop the bouncing around. But that really only has to do with paid placements. So the goal is still to keep kids with family. So if a child comes into foster care out of Walker County and their grandma lives in Abilene, and their grandma in Abilene wants to take care of them, that child is still more than likely going to go to Abilene if that's the best relative to keep that child. So it's not going to change the placement location for our kids unless they're in what is considered to be a true foster home or in a shelter, hospital, RTC, things of that nature. But it will be the responsibility of the SSCCs for both of our regions to make sure to set up services in our area. So if in Region 5 we don't have any emergency shelters for kids in foster care, it is the responsibility of an SSCC to get a shelter, build a shelter capacity within Region 5 so that kids are not going to Region 4 or 6 to be placed in an emergency shelter.
like, let's say,
okay, so she's asking if there's a deadline on, essentially, do they have deadlines on capacity building? Do they have deadlines on getting that shelter, getting that RTC? Theoretically, no. But once they get into stage 2, right past stage 2, so 6 months past stage 2, then they enter a phase where there is financial incentive for meeting the goals of community-based care and financial penalty for not meeting the goals. So some of the measurables for the SSCCs are what percentage of your kids are placed outside of your region. There's a financial penalty if they're placing kids outside of region that's not with a relative provider. There's financial incentive for the number of miles between the child's place of removal and their final placement. So again, that kind of goes back to Rachel and I had asked a few questions. I said, well, if we're on the north end of Washington County, Madison County is our neighbor. So like it would be of more benefit to us for them to be placed out of region, but 20 miles up the road rather than in region, but in Galveston, because they're part of our region. And so there's kind of twofold that they measure, both mile and region, that they'll kind of get points for one, but not for the other. And so there are lots of things that they're measuring to make sure that they're meeting their outcomes. So they don't have to build a shelter, but they're not going to get the money for those kids that are being placed in someone else's shelter in another region.
Would you speak to how this affects kinship care law?
How does this affect kinship care? Rachel, I don't know if you have a thought on this. I don't know if beyond like the workers themselves transitioning and the workers working under a different set of rules, the kinship care process, I think, will essentially still be the same.
Yeah, that's my understanding, and I haven't been told of anything different that would change anything drastically. I've heard not much good or bad or anything really, so I think it's just kind of that same transition, just a different name.
Dave?
Could you expound a little bit on the difference between privatization and partnership? Is this a bureaucracy set aside here to do all this stuff that DFS is doing now? Where's the funding coming from?
So, in order to be the contracted SSCC, you have to be an existing nonprofit organization with the ability to raise your own funds with the majority of your board members residing in Texas. And so, in some ways, that's a popular question, I think, is in some ways, it's like more of the same. Like DFPS, great, we're just changing their title, and now it's SSCC. That is going to be true in some respects, but the hope is that this SSCC provider is both getting money from the state and has the opportunity to go out and they can fundraise. If there's a gap, they can go raise $1 million to build a shelter if they need to do that. Within the state, there's the state box of funds, and those are the funds you have to work with, and you get what you get, you don't go fit. So the hope is that these privatized providers will be out fundraising for the ability to grow these support networks that our kids and families need.
What's the length of time on the contract that they're awarding these? I mean, is it a year that they gotta go through this process every year and be renewed, or?
I think it's a 5-year contract. I wrote that down in my notes somewhere. It's either 4 or 5, but I'm pretty sure it's a 5-year
You have to
contract.
have some length of time for them to be able to prove themselves,
Yes.
but you also have to have a time where you can rate them also, right?
Yeah. It's not going to be an overnight solution, but I think that at the completion of year 4, they open for new contracts again, and then if they want to keep that area, they keep it, and if not, then it's open for other contractors.
The statement, then that would be a con on here. I mean, when you have your pros and cons, that could be a problem.
That it could change, to, like in 5 years,
Yes.
that we're under a whole new
Whatever.
provider.
Yeah.
That is could be a problem for 2030. I do want to run through these pros and cons. So on the pros list, the first thing, and that is what is really, I guess, like the crux of community-based care, is that theoretically, anything becomes possible. You guys know that in working with DFPS, they basically either come to court or with in their head a 400-page manual of the rules that they have to follow and the red tape of the state. And when they have to get permission for something, it has to go to their supervisor, and then the program director, and then the program administrator, and then the regional director, and then back down and back down and then back up. And so the goal, part of the goal of community-based care is to cut that out, to say we're reducing the levels of authority, we're reducing the levels of permission, and we are here to collaborate on whatever is best for this child. So because they are a nonprofit organization, much like we are, if they have something that's not working for a child or family, even if it's supported by their policy, that they're saying we're following all of our policies and this is not working, they can go to their board and say, we need an exception, we need to make a new rule, we need to change our policy. Whereas in the state, you can't do that. The policy is the policy, and it is a literal act of Congress to change that. But the SSCC can make whatever rules they want to make, follow whatever rules they want to follow. And so we have a little bit more room when we're standing in the courtroom to say, I really think this is the best placement for the child, but we don't have a home study done, or we don't have this background check passed. Their hands are not tied the same way that DFPS's hands have been tied in being able to make recommendations for our kids. So, the sky's the limit, hopefully, and hopefully we'll be collaborating better with less red tape with our providers. So I kind of covered all four. I did mention the performance incentives that are financial incentives. So if they are meeting the objectives, the SSCC meeting the objectives of community-based care, they will get more money in their pocket to be able to continue to serve those kids. If they're not meeting the goals, they're working with less money. And as a nonprofit director, I can tell you, if someone tells me they're going to give me money for something, I'm going to work really hard to do that thing. So our hope is that our contractors will do the same thing.
I'm just sitting here trying to imagine too with what you're saying. So family service plan means, those therapists are, that DFPS made arrangements for, and the drug testing that the labs were doing that DFPS made arrangements for. And are there two pockets where, somebody, CPS is handling some of that stuff?